Mac to Monster, back with Marvel Heroes, and this time we got Blade on the chopping block. And this is a rather interesting hero. At first, it would seem that he's a cut and paste from War Machine, and in many sense he is. So at first I was a little bit disappointed, but after playing him, he's rather fun. And if you don't have War Machine, you're gonna rather enjoy him a lot. And if you do have War Machine and you actually got him as part of a pack, you're still going to like him. He offers enough variants that he's still enjoyable. And he has neat little quirks to him that really make him interesting. So, getting into him, just to begin with, I'll show off his costumes here. This is his standard costume. It's pretty cool. He's got the nice big black trench coat. It's flashy, shiny. And then if you wanted, you could have his original costume, which is actually not his standard costume. And this is back in the 70s, obviously. And so, getting into his skills, he's got a mechanic where it's called Thirst, and as skills that you use add a bleed effect to targets, he gets thirsty. And once his thirst becomes full, he becomes starving. And then you got to use the serum to quench the thirst. And then once you become starving, it reduces your damage output by 10% and causes 5% of Blade's maximum health to be lost per second. While starving, 2% of Blade's maximum health is restored on hit, basically showing that you're getting blood taken in. And when you activate the serum power, you eliminate thirst. So that's kind of his mechanic. Now, we'll get into his build here. I call it the Daywalker. Um, it's Daywalker because I'm not using part of his DPS mechanic. Because I'm kind of doing... You can do both ways. This is going to be good for raids and it'll be good for everyday use. Basically, you're going to use his specializations to control what you're going to be doing. So, getting into the serum, this is his defensive passive, and when you activate it, it regenerates 10% of your maximum health on any use, and then an additional 20% if you're starving, for a 30% total. It fully removes thirst and prevents it from generating for 3 seconds. You get a bonus of 10% damage, an attack and movement speed of 10%, and the buff duration is 3% plus an additional 5 seconds if activated when starving. So you can get a total of 8 seconds. I think I said 3%, but really it's 3 seconds. And it's on a 12-second cooldown. So you want to save this for when you're starving. Now the specializations are in control, which is what I would suggest using on everyday and leveling up. Thirst increases at a slower rate, 50% slower rate, and when you are not starving, you get a 5% increased damage negation, 5% increased health, and regenerate 2% maximum health per second. So that's quite a bit of extra life income coming in. You could specialize with only when necessary. This will give you 30% of your maximum spirit, resets the cooldowns of non-signature powers. If it did the signature, I would say this would be an interesting one to take. And the serum's active effects gain an extra 5-second duration. However, not resetting the signature power really deters me from taking it. And then there's never sated. I'm going to say this is going to be the raid specialization, where you're not going to be in too much danger of taking a lot of damage, and you can really maximize the effectiveness of this, because thirst increases 50% faster when your grievous wounds effects deal damage. Damage is no longer reduced when starving, so it actually does an opposite effect of starvation. Increases health regeneration and hit while starving by 50%, so it helps offset how much health you're losing. So you should be able to maintain a good amount as long as you're continuously hitting a target. So when you're out there and you're using it for like terminal use or everyday use, you're not guaranteed to have a target out there. But when you're raiding, you're guaranteed to have the target out there because the boss is always going to be sitting there. And maybe it goes away or maybe it jumps up in the air for a little bit. But for the most part, you're always going to have something to hit. And if it's not around, you can always just use the serum to get rid of your thirst and reset. So it's going to work awesome in raid situations, and it's going to work poorly while clearing terminals. It will work okay on boss terminals, just when you're going down to clear bosses, but mostly those die so fast anyways, you'll never get these stacks up, and I'll get into the stacks in a second. When you hit an enemy while starving, you gain a stack of Bloodlust on a 1-second cooldown with 10 stacks maximum. When the serum is activated, all stacks are consumed, increasing damage by 5%, critical and brutal damage by 10% per stack for 8 seconds. So obviously, ideally, you'll build up to 10 stacks. Again, the only way to make that work is if you're continuously hitting something over 10 seconds. And the only way to do that really is in a raid situation. So I highly recommended saving this for raids. You can try it on a normal use. I didn't like it on normal use because you're always going at the thirst when there's never a mob around, it seems. You kill them off, but then you go thirsty and there's no mob. So you're rushing for a mob, and before you know it, you're at half health dealing with mobs, and you have to hit the serum to get back some health. And then you just wasted all that time. That's what it feels like to me. Where while you're in control, the thirst never gets out of control. As soon as you go thirsty, your screen flashes red with little blood tendrils coming from all angles, and you can immediately hit your serum, and you never have to worry about starvation. It's never a factor. You're never losing damage. You're not doing anything. You're always staying in control. That's why it's in control. So now that we've talked about his mechanic and how to work with it or work against it, we're going to talk about the Daywalker build that I've got going here. So we're going to do 20 points into Glaive Orbit. This is awesome for clearing lots of groups of trash. You got a lot of enemies around you, you can just hit this and this will clear out big amounts of trash. It hits decently, 32,000 to 48,000 with my no gear on, and it's got a good damage, 3,500 twice per second for 8 seconds. It does cost a little bit of spirit, but with gear we'll get that down. Our main attack for the workhorse skill is going to be any means necessary. This is a sword attack, attacks twice per second, does a good amount of damage, 15 to 23,000 damage is listed here with no gear on. And while the serum is active, the damage and attack speed goes up by 10%. Now, you may be looking at the range skills and saying, oh, maybe I want to work with range because you get damage and critical and brutal damage by 25%. The damage over here is actually pretty good, and the attack speed is a big bonus going through. So even though it seems smaller, the devs know what they're doing, and it actually works out fairly well. And any means necessary by all points of the tree is the highest damage skill there is, and it beats out a hand cannon and everything else by a lot. Stake through the heart, 20 points into that. This is going to give us some extra physical damage in the melee tree on an 8-second cooldown. It hits hard. Look at this. Without gear on, I'm at 60,000 to 90,000 damage. It's plus 50% extra damage against bleeding targets. So that's 90 to 135,000 damage with no gear on. And it's an execute, so you gain 1% damage per 1% of targets missing health. This thing's just insane for damage. I mean, depending on when you hit it, you can see massive chunks of health going away, especially when you're geared. Advanced technique. This is its signature. It's basically a three hit signature. It's a little bit confusing to hit at first, but once you get used to seeing what happens, you'll get used to it really fast. It does massive amounts of damage. It's pretty fun to use, and it works well. So how this works is it has three phases. The first blade is Shadow Moon. You'll see a little Shadow Moon pop up over your head. It does invulnerability and invisibility duration for 4 seconds. And then the second blade is the Harvest Moon. It slash physical damage for 83,000 to 125,000. That's without any buffs. And it mobilizes the enemy, which is irresistible, for 2 seconds. Then the third blade, Shattered Moon, it does a flourish of physical damage, which hits for 139,000 to 208,000 per hit with 3 hits. So that's what I mean. It's massive damage. Unfortunately, it's on a 40-second cooldown, so you'll use it and have fun with it, but it'll probably be once per fight on a boss terminal. And then we have 20 points into Toxin-Loaded Gauntlets. This is a good skill. It hits pretty hard again. It's a vulnerability skill. Enemies take extra damage from Grievous Wounds powers. I like it a lot. It really buffs up any means necessary. And it really buffs up Glaive Orbit. And unfortunately, that's the only one it really buffs up. But it buffs it up quite well. And it lasts for quite a while. And with the rotation, it should last quite long. Back in beta, any means necessary was a Grievous Wound skill. Unfortunately, it's not anymore. So this does physical damage per hit. This is only at right now 8,800 to 13,000 damage per 6 hits with 6 hits. And enemy takes 19.5 extra damage from Grievous Wounds powers for 8 seconds. And then explosion damage on death is 42,000 to 63,000 with a spirit cost of 20. Cooldown of 6 seconds. So the timing on using that isn't as important as one would think. There's only one Grievous Wound skill, and that's the Glaive Orbit. This is more single target. For me, it's more single target, anything left standing. And then, because I want the Glaive Orbit out there getting things bleeding before I actually use this. You can swap them around though and hit with this. So this is going on. For bosses, it's probably ideal to do it this way. However, there's nothing wrong with doing it the other way for dealing with trash, because you're going to hit more things with the Glaive Orbit than you will with the Toxic Gauntlets. Toxic Gauntlets is single target. And then we got 20 points into Party Crasher. This will jump you up in the air and land on targets. I usually open up with this because it makes them vulnerable. Enemies take 10% extra damage for 8 seconds, and it terrifies them for 2.9 seconds. And this is again with no gear on, and it's on a 6-second cooldown. But I usually jump into the combat with that, and that's pretty good. And then we come into our last buff, because we already discussed the serum, but we're going to do 20 points into Long Lived, which is a passive. This is our damage passive. This gives us damage rating, critical hit rating, brutal strike rating, and regenerate health when you hit an enemy with a melee power. So we're going to get extra health coming in with this skill as well. And then if you're doing PvP, it's your crowd control immunity buff. So Long Lived is pretty awesome, is worthy of 20 points. I do 1 point in the ride. You already have 1 point in Deadly Dash. I F2 the ride. You just hover over the skill and hit F2, and then every time you hit F2 in game, it'll switch your right mouse button to the ride, and you can hold the right mouse button and you'll ride on the bike. And then you can hit F1 over Deadly Dash, and then to switch back and forth, you just hit F1 and you'll go back to Deadly Dash on the right mouse button. And then the remaining of your points, unless you've unlocked all your points, and then you put 20. In this case, I've got 10 points left over. I put 10 points into the serum. This is your defensive skill, and it only raises dodge and defense rating. Worthy enough to put some points in, and if you're going to play Blade and you plan on making them raid worthy and everything, you should really go out and get the rest of your points so you can raise this to 20. Otherwise, it's worthy of last place. And that's it. That's the Daywalker build. And now I'm going to get into gearing. So he is really similar to War Machine, and a lot of those passives are very similar, except for maybe this never sated. There's nothing really like that on War Machine. However, I'm going with Gugner on him. His crit rating's not quite there, so I want to hit 50%. And once I get to rank 3, I'll have 50% crit rating on this character, maybe a little more, so I'll be happy with that. And then I'm going to build up his health just like I did with Spider-Man, and just like I did with War Machine, and I'm going to do that through gear, because I want to use crit rating on my costume. So I have crit rating all through the costume. I have 3,000 health and 100 spirit on medkit use. Core. And then Core's also got damage rating to melee powers. And so that brings up my crit rating quite a bit. So I'm using a Blessed White Suit Jacket. If you had, say, not this, but you had a advanced Kung Fu training sequence, that would work as well. I prefer the white suit jacket. It's a little bit less defense, a little bit more damage rating, and a little bit more health. I'm using a Blessed Advanced Crimson Crystal of Sideric. They're all blessed with Gila, by the way. This one's pretty awesome. I'm using a Curse Medallion. Again, they're all physical damage characters. So wasn't Kitty Pryde. They're all built quite the same, similar skill sets, which is again why I'm kind of disappointed in what they did with Blade. Maybe they should have held off on Blade until next year, just because he's so similar to the last 3 characters that have been done. Curse Medallion. This gives us critical strike to melee attacks, brutal strike to melee attacks, damage rating to melee attacks. We're all melee in this build. Everything's melee tagged. Blessed Armor issued Nano Poison. This is +2 fighting, which is awesome damage. When you hit with a melee power, you infuse with Nano Poison, increasing your brutal strike rating by 72 and brutal damage rating by 202 for 6 seconds, stacking 3 times. That gives us some health regen and +1 to all powers. I'm using a Blessed Gem of the Curse. Of course, this gives us crit rating, crit rating, brutal strike rating, critical damage rating, and brutal damage rating. Pretty good all-around average artifact. You can pick these up pretty cheap now if you can't find one yourself. Relic of Atlantis. Oh, and the Nano Poison you can buy for armor currency, the armor research drives from the armor vendor. And then, of course, we've gone heavily into the crit rating, so I'm going to do critical damage rating Relics of Atlantis. I got Insignia of Thor. I wanted the health, chance to slow the target. There's nothing that slows, so this is kind of synergetic. It brings around a full debuff situation for the skill set. And plus, when you critically hit, your allies gain defense rating, physical damage rating, and it also has a chance to deal some extra damage on hit. I got my Strength Herbie, +2 ranks to melee powers, 2% base damage to melee powers, 3 strength. I got a Cosmic Ring here, 566 health, 157 damage rating to melee powers, another chance to slow, and 95 crit rating. I really wanted the crit rating. River of the Soul on a defensive Uru. This is going to help cut down the costs of the spirit of the skills. And then I got his full kit for his uniques. I got Toxin Gauntlets. These are level 52, but they're still good enough to use. I'm not going to main them, so I didn't hunt for 60s. 721 damage rating, 7% attack speed. When you hit with any power, regenerate 200 health. 1300 critical damage rating, 1300 brutal damage rating, 1100 health. Uh, when you use a signature power, you get 236 critical hit rating and brutal strike rating for 15 seconds. That's actually pretty nice. +2 to all powers, +4 to stake through the heart, +3 to any means necessary, and +3 to advanced technique. Original coat. 2396 defense. That's a lot of defense, and that's very important. And we'll get into that when we hit unique 5. 2000 health, 200 dodge, 1 durability, which is nice. You take 3.2% less damage from melee powers. That's really nice too. When you become starving, gain 6% bonus damage versus bosses. That's phenomenal. +2 to all powers, +5 ranks to blades, Daywalker powers, +1 rank to the serum, and +3 ranks to long lived. Very nice little unique. Sash of the Ronin, 1600 defense, 97 spirit. When you use the serum, gain +2 all attributes on a 30-second cooldown. 1976 health, you take 3% less damage from area powers, very nice. 224 critical rating, 183 brutal strike rating, +2 ranks to all powers, +6 ranks to vampire hunter powers, +4 ranks to blades, tools of the trade powers. So that's pretty phenomenal right there. I got boots of the spider hero. I'm not sure why the spider hero's on here, but yeah, I'm sure there was something in there. This has got 1789 defense, some movement speed, 50 spirit, minus 15% spirit cost. That's huge right there. 1765 health, 220 crit rating, 213 physical damage rating, 17% chance when you critically hit to gain 2 fighting and 2 speed for 6 seconds. That'll always be up. Gain 4.2 spirit when you hit. That's another huge factor right there. +2 to all powers, +1 ranks to toxin loaded gauntlets. Eric Brooks custom glaive. Eric Brooks is blade, by the way. 1455 defense rating, 1500 health, 280 crit rating, 1300 critical damage rating. When you hit, you gain 229 brutal strike rating for 8 seconds, stacks up to 5 times. You're going to be a brutal monster here. 11% chance to cause target to bleed for 36,000 physical damage over 5 seconds, stacks 3 times. When you reach 3 stacks, you gain 200 damage rating versus bleeding targets for 10 seconds. That's just crazy. +2 to all powers, +3 to glaive orbit. So that's his full kit, and it's pretty nasty. You can see we're almost made our 10k defense mark. They're lowering our defense lately and upping our damage reduction. So, that's what's going on. And it's pretty good. He's going to be awesome in raids because of that specialization. So I think you'll enjoy him quite a lot. But, like I said, I already got characters that are a lot like him, and I really like Kitty Pryde. So we're going to go destroy a Cosmic Dr. Octopus now.
Come out wherever you are.
Wait, I should set it to here. Oh, another thing I meant to show you. See, that's the effect of when you go thirsty and you hit the serum, it goes away. So it takes effect. The Omega system, I'm using no Omega points. The Hero synergy system. Oh, something happened where I lost all my synergies. Well, I'm going to use Ant-Man. And I'm not actually going to use blades, I'm going to use cable. No wonder I was missing a couple percentage of crit chance. And then I'm going to use Dr. Dooms. That's going to give us 10% signature damage bonus. Cable gives us 2% chance to crit. Ant-Man gives us +1 strength. I'm going to use Emma Frost for +1 durability. Let's see who else we're going to use here. We're going to use Moon Knight for 4% physical power crit chance. We're all physical power. Nightcrawler for 4% melee damage. Squirrel Girl for 4% damage versus bosses. And we're going to use Wolverine for 2% brutal strike chance and 5% brutal strike damage. We're going to use War Machine for +1 fighting. And that leaves us with one more. Very interesting. What do we do? Health is very important to us. I think I'm going to take the +6 health from Hulk and call that a day. You're going to do something else besides Hulk? Perhaps Hawkeye. Actually, I think I'm going to change it to Hawkeye in just a sec.
My darker side's coming out.
Yeah, accepted Hawkeye. And then I wanted to show too that with this gear set, even though it's not optimized at 60, I'm still in high 40s for most skills. 45, 45, 45, 46. This is only 43, 42. So it's actually pretty good. It's pretty serious. See, there's the bleed effect. You can see it looks like a eyeball that's been smoking a little too much. Okay, now back to the game.
You'll never take me alive.
So with this specialization, you can see I just get rid of the thirst immediately. Otherwise you lose DPS. And you lose health, and you don't need to lose health or DPS. Hmm, 112, I still need to kill some. Ooh, that was close. Okay, we can go get our bounty hunter box. You can see how that defense pulled me out of there. Those poison clouds chew you up. So for this, I'll switch over to Never Sated, and we'll try to get the DPS factor going against the boss. And then if there's nothing around, you get rid of never sated, or never sated by hitting the serum. But usually you want to hit the serum right around a quarter of the life gone. That should give you enough chance to build up stacks. In this case, I probably hit it a little bit too early because I'm used to hitting it early. But I was able to build up a couple stacks and get some DPS in there. Solo, you want to be really careful with how far you let your health go down. Hitting the button will give you 30% of your life back, which is about here. So if you wait the quarter, you won't make any mistakes. And it gives you a little bit of room to make a mistake and hit your serum and get your life back, or at least back up to somewhat normal. So that's how the two specializations work. That's the Daywalker build. It rips things apart absolutely phenomenally well. And you can see how using the in control specialization to take out the trash and then going into never sated to rip up the boss and how that works. It works really well. And that's how I suggest doing it. And I hope it helps. I hope you guys enjoyed and talk to everybody real soon.